Welcome back to my channel. I have found myself another book tag that I really wanted to do. So here we go. This one just is called the Ultimate Book Tag. It's got quite a few questions, so we'll just try to knock these out of the park real fast. But again, I just love book tags, so this is going to be a lot of fun for me. Alright, question number 1. Do you get sick while reading in the car? Nope, never have. Hopefully never will. I love reading in the car, so I'd be very sad if I lost that ability for reading a good book on long trips when I'm not driving. I'd be very sad. Okay, question number 2. Which author's writing style is completely unique to you and why? Well, my friends, for that one I would have to go with the lovely Miss Diana Wynne Jones. I have never read anyone's style who like wording and things just sound so uniquely her. I can be reading any of her books, just like little snippets from them and everything, and it's like I can tell that that's a Diana Wynne Jones book. And if I ever really get into the writing thing, I'd love to emulate a bit of her poppy, snazzy style and her excellent word choice that I just don't know how she does it or how to emulate it, but there's something in her style that it's like, yep, that's Diana Wynne Jones, that I can just pick out from any book. If I were to just pick it up and only have a snippet, I would know if it was her or not. So that would be my one there. Question number 3. Harry Potter or the Twilight Saga? As well as 3 points to defend your answer. This one, especially this late in the game, may surprise people, but I would probably go with Twilight in this case. Harry Potter I liked a lot when I was younger, but I never actually finished reading the series because I got really bored and tired of it as a kid. And I was like, I'm so sick of this hype and I don't care what's happening anymore. It hit like book 5 and I was like, Harry's just depressed and the whole story's going down the toilet and just being depressing, and I didn't want to deal with it. So I'm calling that reason number 1. But Twilight I did stick with through the whole thing, and I actually really enjoyed at the time, and sometimes I'll go back and read snippets of because there are bits of it that I did enjoy, and sometimes that's what I do with books, is I don't need to reread the whole thing, I'll just go back and read some favorite snippets, and there are a few in Twilight that I'll go back and read every once in a while. And point 3, even though the vampires sparkle, I think vampires are more interesting than wizarding school. Which may also just be a product of our times, because since Harry Potter, there's been so many, like, copycat style, let's have a magic school stories, but that's where I am with that question. Alright, question number 4. Do you carry a book bag? Not super specifically. I have a large purse that I can fit books in. Also, if I'm wearing a hoodie, I will often slip a book into the pocket, but I don't have a bag just specifically for books because I have too many other things that I'm trying to carry usually. Curse this day and age where I need a purse to carry everything. It's really frustrating. There's a little bit of a jump cut there. I got interrupted by the door. So, I'm back now. Next question, number 5 is what we're up to. Do you smell your books? All the time. Particularly the old ones. I love the smell of old books. I often go to the library specifically to find old books and just smell them. I don't so much with new books. New books don't really have the same sort of smell, I've noticed. So yeah, mostly just with old books, but yes, I do smell my books. Okay, question number 6. Books with or without illustrations? With or without little illustrations, super specifically. I don't know why the size of the illustration would matter, but I don't care if it has illustrations or not. I'll read it either way. If there are illustrations and even just cover art on top of that, it'll often dictate like the style that I'm picturing it in my head. For example, reading a series of unfortunate events, that cartoony kind of style that's on the covers and in the pictures and stuff. Totally how I picture the Baudelaires, which is actually probably part of why I didn't like any of the movie adaptations as much as I could have, because I was picturing it cartoony and then it's live action people and the proportions and things are just not the same. But yeah, so illustrations, whether just on the book cover or within the book itself, will kind of dictate how I'm picturing what the book looks like. So I don't care if they're there. If they're not there, I'll just picture things anyways, so it doesn't really affect my reading either way. Question number 7. What book did you love while reading but discovered later it wasn't quality writing? Can't say that there's any super specifically. I mean, I guess kind of relating back to the Harry Potter Twilight question a little bit with those. And I mean, in some ways it's like, oh, I still read YA novels in my late 20s. But if it's something you enjoy, I don't think the quality of the writing should matter super, super much. So that's kind of where I am with that. And I don't really have any issues with that. Alright. Question number 8. Do you have any funny stories involving books from your childhood? I don't know if it counts as super funny, but the first thing that comes to mind is as a child I did like to walk around and read and try to multitask doing things because I was always so busy just wanting to be into my books and stuff. And I can remember teachers and things commenting on it sometimes, like me climbing on the bus while reading and things and be like, look at that crazy girl, she can walk and read at the same time, kind of a thing. But other than that, I can't really think of anything super specific, so hopefully it was a little bit funny, and I'm sorry that it doesn't entirely answer the question, but it was what came to mind. And then now we're on question number 9. What is the thinnest book on your shelf? Offhand, because I haven't measured page numbers or looked super intensely, I'd probably have to say Fire Girl by Toni Abbott. It's not even a YA novel. It's like a maybe middle grade, very much lower level education book. Kidlit, that's the term I'm looking for. But yeah, that would probably be my smallest one. But it's a great book, even as an adult, which is when I found it. It's a great read and teaches a great lesson about how we perceive others and all of that, and why we should still be friends with people, or why we're not friends with people when they look different, all that kind of thing. It's a great book. Again, if you've got little kids that you want to discuss some of those topics with, I think it'd be a great opener. I didn't need to answer any more than just which book, but there you go. That's that. And then question 10 is the opposite end. What is the thickest book on your shelf? Again, this is offhand, not having counted pages, but probably The Way of Kings by Robert Jordan because he finished the series, by Brandon Sanderson. Way of Kings, Brandon Sanderson. That's probably the thickest one. I'm a little behind on owning that whole series, which I'm pretty sure the other 2 that are out now are a lot thicker, but that would probably be my thickest one at the moment because that's the one that I own. Okay, question number 11. Do you write as well as read? Do you see yourself in the future as being an author? I definitely write. There's some potential that I could be an author. I mean, I like writing enough, too, in a lot of ways, but I also have a lot of trouble finishing stories. I can do good beginnings. Sometimes I have a middle to connect the story, and I do fairly good endings, and sometimes just the details get lost in the shuffle, and it's hard to motivate myself to finish stories sometimes, but it would be cool if I could be published. I actually have a project that I've been working on for 5 years now that I really hope one day will be published because it's my magnum opus in my heart that I really want to share with the world. But we'll see if that ever actually happens because as of yet it's not very close to finished at all. But yes, I would enjoy being able to be a writer and saying that I'm an author, if for only that one book. If I got that one book done, I'd be a very happy person. Alright, so next question. Question 12. When did you get into reading? I have been reading for as long as I can remember. One of my earliest memories is sitting down with my grandma and having a picture book between us that was actually a Sesame Street book. It was talking about Bert and Ernie going shopping or something, and him tying a string on his finger to help him remember stuff that he needed to buy. That's probably my earliest memory of reading, but yeah, I've been reading basically my whole life as long as I could. So there's that. Okay, so now question 13. What is your favorite classic book? So I assume by classic we mean not modern in any way. And so far as that goes, there are a few that kind of come to mind. I love Victor Hugo. I've read Les Mis. I've read Hunchback. I read, I forget who it's by. It's called like The Castle or something. I've read some really old like Gothic books that I've really enjoyed. Anyways, I'm doing this on the fly instead of having looked up these books beforehand, but I really love old style writing. So I've read quite a few, and Victor Hugo is the one that stands out first because he's a fairly popular one and all that. I like Charles Dickens a lot. Yeah, I can't think of titles specifically, and I should have looked them up beforehand, but here we are with me not having done that. So there's a brief taste into some of my classical literature tastes. I like old Gothic novels, so go look up some of those. Whatever the one is that she's reading in Becoming Jane, which is a movie, I know, but she references a book in there. I read that one, and that was good. That was my last interruption for this tag. Apologies for that, and sorry that the lighting is now a little different. It's how it goes when you get interrupted and stuff. The times change, the lights change, Life is just beautiful that way. Alright, so if I recall, we should be on question like 14. That's where I am here, I think. Alright, so question 14. In school, was your best subject language arts / English? I definitely did well in English, and for a while it was probably my best one. But by the end of high school, when I was taking like the ACT testing and stuff, I actually scored highest in science. So yes and no, I think. But I always did well in English, so definitely one of my better subjects, if not my best, for most of my school career. Alright, 15. If you were given a book as a present that you had read before and hated, what would you do? It's never really happened. Usually people just ask me for a list of books that I want rather than guessing at books. But if such a case were to present itself, I would say thank you for the book and probably just leave it on my shelf and never read it again. That a similar situation has happened, I guess. Not that I hated the book, but I was given The Book Thief as a present once, and I'd already previously tried reading The Book Thief and couldn't get into it. I really like the movie, but the way the book is written doesn't work for me. So that's one that's just sat on my shelf that I was like, oh cool, you gave me a cool book, but it just sits on my shelf and has never been read. So that's basically how I treat that. 16. What is a lesser-known series that you know of that is similar to Harry Potter or the Hunger Games? There's too many to count, really, but my favorite that falls into a similar category is probably the School of Good and Evil. It's got two friends who go to these schools. The one is this pretty little, like, princessy looking girl, and she wants to go to the School of Good, and there's this, like, dark and gloomy girl who wants to go to the School of Evil, and they get sent to the opposite school than they expect that they should be going to, and then the story just plays on all kinds of fun little tropes and stuff. It's a little trilogy. It's really adorable. Another of the more, like, kidlit style ones, but I think a much more interesting style of story than the way that the Harry Potter and the Hunger Games play out, so there's my opinion on that one. Okay, number 17. What is a bad habit you always do besides rambling while filming? I assume they mean like filming these book tags, and if you haven't noticed, I play with my glasses a lot. My hand covers my face a lot. It's kind of a silly thing. That's probably my biggest thing that's going on there. 18. What is your favorite word? Oh gosh. Off the top of my head, I can't pick a favorite word off the top of my head. There are favorite ones to use in certain situations. Things like exacerbated is really fun to use. I love a lot of the words that start with the letter Q. I just try to have a big vocabulary, really. Anything that makes me sound like I have a big vocabulary is kind of a favorite word. Not that I can think of any of them off the top of my head, because again, I did not prep for this the way I should have and had a list ready. Okay, 19. Are you a nerd, dork, or dweeb, or all of the above? I don't really know what the difference is between all of the definitions, but I probably would most often have been called a nerd or a dork. So, those ones, I guess. Number 20, vampires or fairies, and why? The majority of the time, I'd probably say vampires, because they tend to have more interesting stories. But if you talk about fairies as in like the fae or the early form of like elves and things in like British culture, then fairies. One of my favorite books actually has more of that style of fairies, and those are really cool, but I don't necessarily like the little teeny fluttery around ones that are kind of the traditional fairy these days. Alright, next one, 21, is shapeshifters or angels. Why? I'd have to go with shapeshifters because shapeshifters include wolves, like werewolves, and werewolves are pretty much my favorite. So I'd go with that. But angels can have cool stories too. They just don't get done enough, really, I think, for me to have enough basis to pick them. Alright, next question, 22, is spirits or werewolves? So we just answered this. Werewolves. Werewolves are my favorite. I love wolves, and the idea of turning into a wolf, I think it's really cool. And it's interesting to see the different styles of werewolf that people do. Whether it's one that only turns on the full moon or has the ability to change whenever, all that kind of thing. I like seeing the different plays on werewolves. Next is 23, zombies or vampires. I'd have to go with vampires on this one, simply because zombies are just not really my thing. I haven't really come across many zombie books. I'm sure there are plenty of them, but I haven't really come across them, and I don't really like them in movies or anything. Vampires are just the most interesting to me, so I'd go with that. Well, I guess I just can't win with this video. I had another interruption, and we had 2 questions left, but it's fine. We'll get them out real fast, and then we'll be done with this really ridiculously long book tag. Okay, last of my 2 last questions. 24 is love triangle or forbidden love. I think that as a general rule, forbidden love tends to be written more interestingly, and love triangle is just such a super cliche that it happens everywhere that I would much prefer a forbidden love story. And yeah, like when I do my own writing, I try to stay away from the love triangle just because it's such a common thing, and I'm really bored and tired of it, and I think it's really annoying that everyone does it. I don't know how well I do avoiding it in my own writing, but that's what I go for. Yeah, so of the 2, I would definitely pick a forbidden love story over a love triangle. Just not that interested in love triangles. Okay, and now our final question. Woo! Full-on romance or action-packed with a few love scenes? The majority of the time, I'd probably go with romance as a sidebar, particularly since romance novels tend to end up a little bit in like the sex territory and stuff, and I'm really not interested in reading any of that. But I'm sure out there are romance novels that don't do that and could be interesting, and I mean, some of the projects I'm working on could technically qualify as romance novels, but I don't know. I tend to like it more as like a sideline to a story, because too, when you have it as a full-on story, you look at like chick flicks and stuff, it just gets so cliched so fast. So yeah, that's everything for this book tag. So this is Fiona Harper signing out.